I've made quite a few mistakes on the bike, some being just, minor inconveniences, and others quite literally almost killing me. And in this video, I'm going to share exactly what those mistakes were so that you can hopefully avoid making them and save yourself time and energy and maybe even your life. My name is Ely, I'm a strength coach for cyclists. Let's dive in. All right, mistake number one, and this is a really stupid one. So I was supposed to be on a group ride one day with a group of 60, 70-year-olds, pretty strong 60, 70-year-olds, a few 50-year-olds in there as well. And I show up to the group ride. I remember the day before I got a notification on my Garmin that the Di2 battery was low. Now, last time I got that notification, I was still able to ride around 300 or 400 kilometers before I had to charge the bike, so it wasn't really a big deal. As we get on the ride, I get the low notification again. I'm like, okay, not a big deal. Like I probably got around 300K in this. And I know we were only planning on doing 100 kilometers that day. So we get out for a ride. Literally, I kid you not, 30 seconds later, I get the Di2 battery critical. And I'm like, oh no, what the heck? Next thing you know, I am stuck on a really expensive fixed gear bike. And we were planning 100 something kilometers that day, 120K. It's up and down, and we got hills, and we got sections of 12, 13, 14%, and we're riding on the flats, and we're descending, and now I am stuck in one gear. And I'm like, what the heck? And to be honest, I'm actually pretty happy that I was able to make it through that ride, and I made it through pretty comfortably for the most part. But around 100 kilometers in, we had a short, punchy climb, and I decided to just stand up because that was the only way I would be able to make that climb. And at the top, my legs started cramping. And we literally had about 15 or 20 kilometers to go, and my legs cramped so hard, harder than they've ever cramped in my life. I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm never coming to a group ride without charging my bike again. So, moral of this story, two morals actually. Number one, make sure to charge your bike. And this is like the easy moral of the story. Please charge your bike. You do not want to end up in the same situation that I was in. Moral number two is I probably would not have been able to make it through that ride unless I had actually trained like that. Meaning, I trained for months beforehand in a variety of cadences, producing power in a variety of cadences. I would train to produce power in low cadence and in high cadence and standing and seated. And I genuinely think that if I hadn't trained like that and hadn't given my body that kind of stimulus to adapt to, then I wouldn't have been able to make it through this ride and I would have gotten dropped quite early. So, twofold to this story. Make sure to charge your bike and train in a variety of cadences to meet the demands of whatever it is that you are going to be exposing yourself to, whether it be a race or a group ride or just some kind of personal challenge. Mistake number two, and this kind of goes with number three. So there was around 140 kilometer event that I was supposed to do last year. I show up to the event, I was feeling genuinely pretty good. Like I wasn't my strongest, I wasn't at my peak, but I also wasn't my weakest. It was like an okay fitness level. It's an OPP ride. We had around 140-ish kilometers. There was probably at least 100 people there. The organizer of the event says, all right guys, we are going to be splitting up into two groups. Group number one is going to be the race group. Now, it is hilly terrain and it's like rolling hills. And so I was expecting like I could probably hold around 30 kilometers an hour, maybe 31, 32 with the group. He was like, race group is going to be 33 to 36 and above. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can hold that. Like, I don't know if I have the fitness for that. At that point, I'm still cramping on really long rides because my body wasn't used to it. I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to be that rider who 80 kilometers in, I get dropped. And so I'm like, oh, okay. And then he's like, and then group number two is going to be the sightseeing ride where you are averaging 25 kilometers an hour and less. I'm like, bro, there's no in-between group. Why is it just group one, which is race group 35 plus, and then group two, which is sightseeing group 20? Where's the 25 to 35 range? I'm sitting there like, what the heck? Anyways, as I'm thinking to myself, I'm like bombarded, like, can I do this? Can't I do this? Like, do I really want to do the fast group and then get dropped? Is that more embarrassing than starting with the slow group? And I'm like, okay. I ended up just wanting to do the slow group. Big mistake on my end. It was so slow. 25 kilometers an hour. Not average. My guy was like, max speed was 25 kilometers an hour. Once we hit 30 on the downhill, they were braking because they didn't want us to exceed 30 kilometers an hour so that the people behind could keep up. I underestimated myself. Yeah, I underestimated myself, and then I really regretted going with the sightseeing group because we were in the saddle for like 6.5, 7 hours that day. Whereas the fast group got there 2 hours earlier. I could have been home 2 hours earlier. But granted, that was the mistake. Underestimating myself. But mistake number 3 is very similar. It's on the other side of the extreme here, is overestimating myself. One time in Dubai, I showed up to a race. It was Spinney's race. If you guys have ever done it, it's around a 93, 94 kilometer race, UCI as well. And so we show up to the race and I'm in a fast group and I thought to myself, you know what? I'm pretty strong. My fitness was at a peak. I'm feeling really good. And I genuinely was actually pretty strong during the time. So I show up, I quickly, when the race starts, head to the front of the group. And now we've just started. We are 1, 2, 3 kilometers into this 95 kilometer race, 94 kilometer race. And guess who is leading the group? This idiot right here. I decide that I am going to lead the group. And I'm like out here pushing tempo, pushing threshold to maintain a 38, 40 kilometer an hour average. And within half an hour, I am toast, like toast. And now I'm just chilling with the group. Like my heart rate's really high. I'm just trying to keep up. And that was on me. That was a huge mistake. I overestimated myself, sitting at the front of this group, leading the fast group, leading the pack. And then only a few kilometers in, by like kilometer 15, kilometer 20, I'm toast and I have 70 kilometers to go. So, moral of these 2 mistakes, don't overestimate yourself and don't underestimate yourself. I guess just estimate yourself correctly. That's probably the moral here. Mistake number 4, and this is a really stupid one. I had heard like these horror stories. You know, a horror story as a cyclist is when you get a flat tire and then you have to call your spouse to come pick you up. That sucks. And so I thought to myself, I don't want to do that. That's embarrassing. So I went and I made sure I had spare inner tubes. I made sure I had all the tools that I needed. I made sure I had CO2 and like the cartridge and everything. And so I have a little saddlebag that holds all of that stuff. One day I'm around 30 kilometers into a ride and I get a flat tire. I'm like, oh no, like I went over a pretty thick pothole that I didn't see. I got a flat tire. I pull off to the side. Turns out I had 2 flat tires. Okay, no biggie. I have 2 inner tubes with me. But that wasn't the mistake. The mistake was I never practiced changing the inner tubes before. So I was sitting there on the side of a really busy road, busy intersection. I'm like trying to watch a YouTube video really quickly about how to change inner tubes, and I'm trying to do all this and I have no idea what to do. If I had just practiced beforehand, I could have saved myself a lot of time and a big headache, and also like not being scared that I'm on a busy intersection trying to change my tubes. It would just have been a whole lot easier. Moral of this story is make sure to practice changing. Literally take some time, deflate your tire, practice taking the tube out and putting it back in. It'll save you a lot of time, especially if you're on a group ride. You don't want to be the guy who's slowing everyone down because you don't know how to change the tube, and then even if you have all the tools. I had all the tools I needed, I just didn't have the knowledge. Silly me, I didn't learn from my mistake, and it came back to bite me in the butt a few weeks later when I was in Abu Dhabi going to a race, and I decided I was going to ride to that race, and again I get a flat tire, and guess who doesn't know how to change his inner tube again because he only did it one time and forgot how to do it. I ended up missing the race because the second I finally got the inner tube done and changed and ready to go, the race had already started. Moral of the story, make sure to practice changing your tubes. What are we on? That was 4. Mistake number 5. So if you don't know me, I like to travel with my bike. I travel with it quite often, and there were 2 specific instances. I'm gonna stick with one, but 2 specific instances where I'm in a foreign country, I've never ridden there before, and I wanted to go out on a ride. So my wife and I were chilling in a little town called Sibiu in Romania. It's a gorgeous town, beautiful bike routes, and I thought to myself, I'm gonna go out for a 2-hour ride today. I opened the Strava map. So I go ahead on Strava, I open the map and I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, they gave me a few ride options. This one looks pretty good, around 1,100 meters of climbing or something like that. I'm like, okay, that'll be fun. That'll give me around 2 hours, with the descent and everything. Okay, great. So I get packed up, I get enough food with me, I connect the map to the Garmin, make sure it's loaded on there, and I start riding. 15 kilometers in, I'm like kind of thinking to myself, am I sure I'm in the right place? Like I'm looking, the Garmin says I'm on the right road. And next thing you know, 20 kilometers in, I am on a one-way highway. There's a huge barrier between. Cars are speeding past me 110, 120 kilometers an hour. So like 60 miles, 70 miles an hour. And I'm like, and huge semi trucks are cruising past me, and I'm on this tiny little path here. There's hardly any place to ride. I'm going 30, 35. Like, I'm trying to push hard to get off this highway because there was no exit for quite a few kilometers, and my Garmin's like, you're going the right way. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm risking my life. I was terrified. So many times I had to come onto the road because there was nowhere to ride on the side. The mistake was letting Strava actually plan out my route. So here's what I do now instead. When I'm in a completely new foreign area, foreign country, foreign town, and I'm planning out a ride, what I do instead is I go on Strava and I go on segments in the area. And then I click on those segments and I click on any of the riders who have done that segment either today or this year, or even the top riders who have done that segment. I look at the route they did and then I copy that route. That way, at least I know that someone has done this route before, and it's not just Strava giving me out some like kind of Google Maps, go on a highway as if I'm trying to get the most efficient route possible. So I save my life without having to risk it with trucks passing me by at 120 kilometers an hour and I'm sitting on a highway riding. So it kind of looks like this. Go on Strava here, click segments. And then when you click on the segment, obviously you'll get quite a few. You click on one there, you'll notice it, see details, and then you just like click all time, click a few, you see whoever this is did a ride there, and then you could copy that ride. I think I clicked on a mountain bike segment, but granted, still the same. And this happened twice. Another time in Abu Dhabi, where first time I was ever riding in Abu Dhabi, my phone had no service. I planned out a route, again, according to Strava. And nothing against Strava, it's just not the best at planning out routes for the first time in a new country. If you don't know, you can't really ride on the roads there. And so I'm getting stuck because I knew there was a bike lane and I couldn't find it, and I was lost and I had no idea how to get home, and I'm like getting really stressed because cars are passing me by really quickly. It was not a fun time. That's what I do now. All right, mistake number 6. Again, a mistake where I was in a foreign country and I didn't do the right thing because I planned out the route exactly the way I described it. A big 120 kilometer loop around the area. I planned it out perfectly, that I would have the right food, that I would have fun, that I knew I was capable of handling it, that the elevation was gonna be on point, that it was gonna be on small country roads. I thought I was a genius. And I get on this route, I'm riding, and I get onto a mountain. There's no houses anywhere nearby. I'm on these village roads. There's like nothing. There's no places to stop. There's no convenience stores. There's nothing. And I run out of water. And it's a hot day. I'm parched. I am out of water on a climb. If I go backwards, I have to go at least 30 kilometers to get to the nearest village before I could find some water. If I go forward, I have no idea how long I need to go to the nearest village before I could find some water. And so I'm just like really thirsty. I had some food with me still, so I'm like trying to eat, but that was just making me more thirsty, of course. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I really should have planned out for a water stop, because on a 120 kilometer ride on a hot day with 2 water bottles, it clearly wasn't enough for me.
Bro, I'm gassed. Look at the sweat on me. I'm only maybe halfway up this climb, maybe, and I'm done. I'm toast.
Luckily, I'm in the middle of this mountain, and I actually get to a tiny little village that has a spring of water coming out of it. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank God. Keep in mind, I have 2 water bottles, 500 milliliters each, like not that much. And I show up, I get to this mountain, there's a spring of water coming down, and there's like a lineup of people, each with 5-liter jugs of water and the slowest stream of water coming out of this mountain. I'm like waiting here for the spring. I waited for 20 minutes to fill up my bottles because people were filling up their 5-liter jugs and didn't want to give me a 500 milliliter sip, whatever. I ended up chugging my water, filling it up again, and then going. So moral of this story, if you're gonna plan out routes in a foreign country, or even anywhere you are now, make sure to plan out water stops and maybe even food stops. And finally, the biggest mistake I made is allow myself to be convinced that in order to improve on the bike, all I needed was more miles in the saddle, more time in the saddle. The reality is, as a CEO, as an entrepreneur, as a husband, as a frequent traveler, I simply don't always have the time to spend more miles in the saddle. Like, my time is valuable. I don't have 10, 15, 20 hours a week to go ride. I know that will get me great zone 2 results. My body will become more efficient at riding, but I simply don't have that kind of time. And so when I allowed myself to ride that much, not only was I getting really tired and not having the energy to be able to devote to the other important things in my life, like my family or my work, but I was just like, this is too much. It was overwhelming. If I missed my workouts, then I felt guilty. And it was just like, I don't have 3 hours, 4 hours that day to spend on the bike. But now I found a way that you don't have to train for 10, 15, 20 hours a week to see really good results. In fact, a lot of the cyclists I work with, myself included, are seeing better results with less time, because the same way in business, if you are a business owner or entrepreneur, you understand leverage. You get more results for less time and energy spent on the thing that you're doing, because you're doing the thing that's going to give you the best results for the least amount of time and energy. That's leverage. And so when I took that model and thought, okay, is there a way that I can actually apply this to training so that we do less but see better results? Lo and behold, there was. And I found that system and I finally implemented it. And now I'm only training 4 or 5, maximum 6 hours a week and seeing better results than most people I know. And same with my clients as well. So if you're interested in doing that, I will leave a link to the video where you can watch how to do that right here. It's literally called The Busy Cyclist Guide to Training Less and Seeing More Results. Hope that helps. Those were the 7 biggest mistakes that I made as a cyclist, and I hope that you learn from them and do not repeat them. And maybe save yourself a little bit of time, a little bit of inconvenience, and maybe your life, so you don't get stuck on a highway in the middle of a foreign country going one way. Catch you next time, guys.